Welcome into the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I'm jacked up to be with you today. Got a lot of good stuff to go over. We're going to start some of our tournament breakdown. And to help us look at the ACC from the ACC Digital Network, Mr. Wes Bryant joins us. Wes, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on, man? Love to talk to you as always, man. Been missing you a little bit.
Well, you got to text me because I'm dumb and I forget things. I always forget to bring you. I have like four different guests that I should bring on, and my brain just slips me sometimes. But I tell you what, man, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the ACC and the tournament this year. And when I look at the ACC, you know, there are some good teams from the conference that are in the tournament. But do you think it was disrespectful for Georgia Tech to be seated as low as they are? I mean, it's like the lowest seeded ACC champion in like 38 years.
Well, I think you have to look at it, as I said, as a sign of the times and the way the season went. I mean, Georgia Tech was in the ACC tournament. They were the 5th seed overall. So, you know, we're not talking about a 28-29 win, you know, North Carolina, or a 28-29 win team in general. So I think that, you know, some could look at it as disrespect, but Georgia Tech wasn't the champion, you know, that everybody had pegged going in. And so, you know, you look at the fact they were a 5th seed in the ACC tournament. So, you know, they couldn't have expected to get a super high seed.
Well, I think that Georgia Tech, though, has an interesting draw there with Loyola Chicago, and that should be one of the more interesting 8-9 games in the opening round.
Yeah, definitely should. We know the run that this team made a few years back with what's the lady's name? Sister
Jean. She's now. I was going to talk about that later on. She is 101 years old, and is jacked
Sister
up about
Jean,
going to the NCAA tournament. I mean, that is a wonderful story.
Yeah, Sister Jean, you know, you got to hope some of that magic doesn't rub off. But Georgia Tech, this is a gritty team, a very hungry team. They seem like they're peaking at the right time, but that's the thing with the ACC this season is that, you know, teams show flashes of them being teams that we think that they can be, and then they'll take a dip. So it's like, you know, every team this season has had those type of runs, whether you talk about Virginia, Florida State, North Carolina, Duke. Everybody has a 3-4 game spurt. You say, well, hey, this team could do some damage. This team could really start to dominate. And then they'll lose 2 games in a row. And you say, well, maybe they're not the team that we thought. So that's the thing for Georgia Tech. I mean, this is a 24-win ball club. We know that when teams see ACC on the jersey of their opponent, that's going to up that ante just a little bit more, up the intensity a little bit more. So Georgia Tech certainly has to be on the lookout.
Who do you think is the bigger sleeper ACC pick? Would you go with Syracuse or North Carolina?
Well, I mean, you would definitely have to go Syracuse. Syracuse sitting there as an 11th seed, taking on San Diego State. And Syracuse is a team this year, again, that has been up and down, and they've had some ugly losses this season. North Carolina's a brand name. They're blue blood. So nobody's going to be surprised if North Carolina gets in the tournament and even made, you know, a Final Four run. People will say, you know, this wasn't a Final Four team that we thought was going to be that at the beginning of the season, but who's really going to be surprised, you know, if Roy Williams in North Carolina makes a deep tournament run. So I'm definitely going to go with the Syracuse Orange, just because with that 16-9 record, they've been up and down this season, and as I said, has had some really ugly losses. So it would certainly be the Orange.
Well, but you know what? You mentioned teams going hot and cold. Clemson started the year 7-1, wins over Purdue, Alabama, a great start to the season, and then they kind of cool off a little bit. The COVID pause gets them, but then they go undefeated in February, which you don't really hear that very often. I mean, it really is a box of questions when it comes to this Clemson team this year.
It definitely has been, and this is a team as well. You look at Amir Sims, and he's had a pretty good senior season. He's the leader for this ball club. Alamir Dog, we know that he can make plays for this basketball team as well. And then they just have a lot of different guys who can contribute in many ways, whether you talk about Hunter Tyson, if he gets, hot from behind the arc, or just an assortment of guys. But this is a team, at the beginning of the season, they looked like they had a chance to be a top 15 team all season. COVID hits, and we know how that goes. They had a long break, and then they came out and got destroyed for 3 to 4 ball games in a row. You start to think this team was really just going to fall off the cliff, and then they rise back up again, find themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of tournament run they can make. Is it going to be the Clemson team that we're seeing or that we've seen this season that has looked great and looked like they can beat anybody? Or, will they revert back and just have one of those lapses?
One team that consistently here over, say, the past 8 to 9 seasons that has been near the top of the conference is Florida State. And it seems like if you look at last year's team, Leonard Hamilton had that team locked and ready to go. They kind of tapered off just a little bit this year, but is this the year that Florida State finally breaks through and makes it into that Final Four?
You just don't know because you expect Florida State to come into the ACC championship. You feel like they've got some momentum on their side. You feel like they're going to be a little chippy because of what happened last season and them not getting to complete their championship with the tournament win. They've only won it once, I believe, in the Leonard Hamilton era. And so this is a basketball team that you wonder in championship settings, can they get it done? Because we haven't seen that yet. No matter what caliber of players that they have, we know the run they made a couple of years ago into the Elite Eight, I believe it was. But this is a team that, you're disappointed. Georgia Tech, let me not take anything away from them. But you looked at that game and you thought, Florida State's going to be chomping at the bit. They got back to what was taken from them last year. So you thought this team was going to come out like gangbusters. And they actually did come out like gangbusters. But then Georgia Tech came back, took the momentum back, and won the basketball game. So you really wonder about this basketball team. Are they ready for the bright lights of the NCAA tournament and to make that run? And to be frank, I'm not sure how confident I am in this bunch because like many teams in the ACC, they just don't have a go-to guy. And when you get into these games with these teams that, that nobody knows about like that, because you run into a lot of those in the NCAA tournament, or when you run into the big dogs, let's say you run into Michigan, which if they do that, that would be that would mean they've had a successful tournament run. But let's see, you get to the second round, you play maybe a Georgetown. Right. Not Georgetown, or Georgetown is red hot as well, but you play a Colorado or Georgetown in the second round. But it just comes down to when you get into these tight games, do you have a guy that you can get the basketball to that can get a bucket? And we know that, yes, we love team basketball and we love teams that play as a unit, but hey, let's not get it twisted. When you start getting down to the nitty gritty of this tournament and trying to advance, you need a guy that you can say, hey, look, we can't make a shot right now. We're up 2 or we're down 2. We need you to take this thing over and bring us home. And there's really nobody in the ACC, in my opinion, that can do that. And that's why I'm not sure how many teams we will have that will be ultra successful, including Florida State.
When I look at Florida State, man, the more and more I watch, I look at Scotty Barnes, a projected lottery pick. He's had double-digit scoring in 4 of his last 7 games. It looks like he's finally getting his feet under him. And I tell you what, the NCAA tournament, that's a time for a young man to shine, especially if they're going to head on to the NBA draft. But, you mentioned that one guy. Maybe that could be the guy for Florida State that could push them over the hump.
Yeah, and Scotty Barnes, he is a really good player. But the thing about him is, and the thing I don't understand about a lot of these guys, and this is a broader conversation,
okay,
but, he's listed as a guard, but
right.
He can't shoot. And
that's something that bothers me too. How is it that you could be a starting guard and pick your Power 5 conference, but you're only shooting 64% from the free throw line? How in the blue world does that happen? I don't get that at all.
Yeah, and it's like you watch NBA basketball now, and there may be one player in a starting 5 who cannot shoot the 3-point shot. And so I just don't get how a lot of these prospects coming up, they don't watch basketball and they say, well, oh, this is what's going to make me successful. I maybe should work on this part of my game. So I say all that to say, yes, I think Scotty Barnes, I think he does everything else really well, but he is not a good shooter of the basketball. And I think that when teams start to sense stuff like that, especially when you're playing against good, savvy basketball teams, they're going to pack it in on you. And they're going to say, you're going to need to make a jump shot if you're going to beat us. Because we know in March, you got to make threes. You got to make jump shots because you're going to play that team that's going to come out and light you up and be shooting 40+% from three for the game. And you're going to have guys that can make that shot. So as far as Scotty Barnes being a guy that can put the nose on his back, I just don't know that he's a guy that, with his game being limited offensively as far as shooting, that he's a guy that's just going to continually put them on his back game after game after game. He may have a good game or so within the tournament, but as far as a guy that you can just rely on that struggles to shoot the basketball from deep, I just don't know how far you can get with that.
All right, well, when we look at North Carolina, and we'll talk about the Tar Heels for just a second. North Carolina, it seems to me that they're another team that they don't really shoot the ball very well, but North Carolina can really hit the rebound. So, I mean, I think rebounding is the key stat here for the Tar Heels if they're going to have a shot to advance against Wisconsin.
Definitely. It's the old Roy Williams formula. He likes those big guys. He likes the traditional big man, and they have some guys that can play, whether you're talking Walker Kessler, Armando Bacot, Garrison Brooks. We know that, he can contribute to the team as well. And Day'Ron Sharp has been, has the look of a baby monster in the making. So, but the Tar Heels, it all comes down to how are those guards going to play? And you're talking about, how's Kermit Walton going to shoot the ball? Is Caleb Love going to be on? And he's been wildly inconsistent. So for the Tar Heels, it just comes down to their guard play. And we know once again in college basketball in March, it's all about the guards. And so for Carolina, you hope that you can come into a game and absolutely dominate a team on the boards. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to make shots. And you just, at this point, you just don't trust Carolina's guards enough and their wing players enough to feel confident that they can make a deep run as well. Because as you said, they just don't shoot the ball well enough. And you just can't get far in March without shooting the basketball well.
Somebody that does shoot the ball well is Buddy Boeheim for Pitt. I mean, the guy can, but for Syracuse, he can shoot from three. And Syracuse is always a tough team in that tournament because of that matchup zone. If you don't really see that a lot, it could really throw you off.
It definitely can, and this is a team that defensively have left a lot to be desired for Coach Boeheim this year. As I said earlier, they've had a lot of games where they've been absolutely riddled by teams offensively, giving up 85, 90 points, and this is a team that just defensively hasn't been what they've been in the past, and they have had to rely a little bit more offensively, and that's what they're going to have to do in this tournament because teams figure out ways to score in that zone, and they have guys that aren't playing it the way Coach Boeheim. And the main thing is that, they don't have those shot blockers in the middle. With Syracuse, they normally have that 6'10", 6'11", uber athletic, a big down low that gets blocks. They normally have two of those guys that sit down there and they block shots. And that's what makes that defense go is that, when you're trying to job that basketball, they have guys who can alter your shot. They have guys who can block those shots, and then they make you stay out on the perimeter, and then they stick to you like glue, and you have a bad shooting percentage. With that said, though, Buddy Boeheim, he is a big-time player, and if Syracuse could have made more of a run in the ACC tournament, he was really lighting people up. You also have Allen Griffin, a guy who can get the job done for them, as well as Quincy Guerrier. So they're going to have to rely on all three of those guys, and I've always been a fan of Merrick Dolezal as well, but he goes kind of as those guys go out on the perimeter. But that big three of Guerrier, Griffin, and Boeheim, they're going to have to really step up for Cuse if they want to make a deep run.
All right, so I know you don't care about me putting you on the spot, but of the teams that are from the ACC, which one do you think has the potential to take down their region?
Oh, if I had to choose, I'm going to go with. Wow, that one's tough.
It's tough because
I mean,
you could go Florida State. That would be the safe pick. You could be a little cavalier and take Virginia, who is the 4 seed, not necessarily the best Virginia defensive team, but or you could go deeper and say, you know what, Georgia Tech with Jose Alvarado could ride that way into the Final Four. I mean, there are several different options there that make a lot of sense.
yeah, I mean, if you want to look at, if you want to pick a team, because you look at Virginia and you look down the line, Elite Eight, if they were able to make it that far, you're talking about a matchup with Gonzaga, and we saw what Gonzaga did to them early in the year. And granted, yes, it was early in the year, but the thing that would not make me confident about Virginia in a rematch with Gonzaga is, again, Virginia doesn't have that guy. And Gonzaga has a lot of guys. They have a lot of shooters. Now, I don't think Gonzaga is going to win the national championship like everybody else does, but Virginia, to me, just doesn't have it. I'm going to go with Florida State because Michigan has a key injury. I forget the guy's name, but they have a key injury on their team, and they look like they're not going to be the same basketball team that they've been all season long.
Right.
You look at the rest of that region, as I said, who's really scaring you? Texas just won their first Big 12 championship, and you got Alabama in that crew as well, which Alabama looks like a team on a mission. But if I had to pick one that may have the best path to do so, I'm going to go with Florida State just because the number 1 seed in that region has been wounded, so to speak, as far as losing one of their key players. So I'm going to go with the nose.
All right, my final question for Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network joining us this afternoon here on the Rundown. This season, the Big Ten got the most teams into the NCAA tournament. And normally, when we look at that, just that stat, normally the ACC they kind of set the standard with that. Has the Big Ten passed the ACC as far as basketball relevance in the short term?
Yeah, that's the key word, in the short term. But we all know, not to get on my high horse and not because I'm an ACC guy,
right?
But we all know in college basketball, who the premier conference is pretty much year in, year out. You may get a year or two. And just like in football, as much as SEC fans can annoy me, the SEC is the preeminent conference in college football. And you may have a year or two where they're down, but for the most part, they're going to have most of the dominant teams in the sport. Same thing goes with basketball. We know Carolina and Duke weren't Carolina and Duke this year. We know what Syracuse represents. We know what Florida State's been over the last, the last bit of time. And we know what the ACC looks like in the top and the middle. And it's always one of the deepest, most competitive conferences in college football. We know the coaches that are in the ACC. So, yeah, the Big Ten definitely has had great basketball, and they always are pretty great. But we know that the ACC is, as I said, the preeminent conference in college basketball. Let's not get it twisted out there to anyone who thinks otherwise.
All right, Wes Bryant joining us from the ACC Digital Network. And, of course, you guys put out some great content over there. Tell folks how they can find that and where they can follow you on Twitter and Instagram.
Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at the ACCDN, at the ACCDN. You can catch me personally, Wes Bryant, on Twitter, Wes Got Range, Instagram, Wes Got Range 704.
All right, Wes, man, thanks for joining us today, talking a little bit about the ACC, but I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, my man.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later on.
All
right, there you go.
Pleasure as always.
Thanks, man. Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network going over some of the teams from the ACC. Don't worry, SEC fans, we're going to talk about the SEC too. I know folks will be yelling at me on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Why did you not talk about the SEC? I've got plenty of SEC stuff as far as the tournament, so calm down. Calm down. Take you some aspirin. Calm down a minute. It'll be all right. We will have that for you when we come back. You're listening to The Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. What's up, y'all over there? Appreciate you guys watching online. Man, are you guys filling out your brackets? Are you guys having problems? Because I'm kind of having problems with mine. I ain't gonna lie. It's been tough for me this year. Normally I have a general idea of where I'm gonna go, but is anybody, maybe am I just a redneck idiot Southern guy because I'm not buying Gonzaga? I don't think Gonzaga's that great. I really don't. Maybe I need to watch more of them. I don't know. They just don't impress me very much, you know? Maybe I need to get my head right on that. We'll see. It's a hard time for me to look at my bracket, though, and not really. Normally, by this time, I already have my national championship team picked out. Yeah, no problem. I do have problems. You're right, Alan. Big time problems. Welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I have to give a shout out to Alan on YouTube over there saying Rob has problems. I do have problems. Trying to put together my bracket, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go as far as the national champion goes. Just saying. Having some problems. You know, it'd be easy just to sit here and have a cookie cutter bracket with Gonzaga, which is being shoved down our throat by every single big time analyst that's out there. I'm just not buying Gonzaga. I know they're undefeated. JW makes a good point. Illinois might win it all. You know what I can say about Illinois? They won a conference that's a lot more challenging than the West Coast Conference, where you got to play Pepperdine. I don't know why I always pick on Pepperdine. Pepperdine alums out there are going to be like, I hate Rob. And that's fine. But I think winning the Big Ten, which is what Illinois did, is a little bit more of a better gauge of being a good basketball team over winning the West Coast Conference. I mean, Illinois got, I got to watch some more Illinois stuff. I'll see if I can pull up some of that tonight and get a good feel there for for Illinois and their brackets. So I said I would talk about the SEC. You know, I did find something interesting today. Skip Bayless from ESPN is it ESPN or Fox or wherever he is now? I don't really watch his show, but this headline came up in my feed, and basically he says he likes 2 SEC teams to go to the Final Four. Check out these comments.
Alabama is one of my picks, but out of that league, I'm also going with Arkansas because back on February 24th at Arkansas, my man Moses Moody just did a number on Alabama, and they won 81-66. That was the game of the year for Arkansas, coached by my guy Eric Musselman, who I knew pretty well when he coached the Golden State Warriors. I know he's bounced around a little bit, but he's coaching the heck out of Arkansas. So they're my second team. Alabama is one of my picks, but out of that.
Yeah, so there's that. Now, he makes a good point about Arkansas and Coach Eric Musselman, who's coached everywhere. I mean, the guy is you remember the where you have the big suitcase and you're going overseas and they put the stickers on your suitcase? I remember it from like It's a Wonderful Life, you know, where he gets the big suitcase and he wants to be able to put the stickers on it. That's kind of how Coach Musselman is. Coached everywhere. But his system works. And I think Arkansas would be a sleeper pick. But, you know, when I look at Alabama, they've got John Petty, and I've said if they have to hit the 3 to win, and I still stand behind that. But if they're hitting the 3, they're very tough. Remember, they were down 15 points to Tennessee, came back and won that game, and then beat an LSU team who, let's be honest, doesn't play any defense at all. I mean, they're the worst rated defense in the KenPom top 50. Okay? But they still beat that team, and LSU's got 2 or 3 guys that are going to be drafted. Herbert Jones is Coach Frank Martin says Herbert Jones is his favorite player in the SEC. He said that before the Alabama game this year because Herbert Jones is like a Swiss Army knife. He could do just about anything. So when you see that, I still worry about Alabama hitting the 3. But if they do hit the 3, they can knock just about anybody off. They really, really can. So Alabama being there is not really, would not be that surprising. I don't think I'm going to put them on my bracket, but hey, he's not that far off. Now, remember, Arkansas, they lost by 31 to Alabama on January 16th. They didn't lose another SEC game in the regular season. They started 2-4 in league play, and then they finished 13-4. So they're kind of cresting at the right time. Moses Moody averaging 17 points and 6 rebounds, shoots 38% from three-point land. You know, Wes was talking about a guy that can go out and get you a bucket. There don't seem to be that very many of those in the ACC. Moses Moody is one in the SEC that can go and do it all for you. So he's averaging, of course, the double figures for a team that's won 9 in a row prior to that loss to LSU, which makes you wonder, LSU is a 9 seed or an 8 seed. If they can knock off this Arkansas team, why couldn't they have the capability of going to the Final Four? Would anybody be shocked by that? I'm not putting all my eggs in the LSU basket either. But they've got the best point guard that money can buy, and according to their coach, how he's still coaching, I don't know. I really don't know how Will Wade is still coaching with the stuff they've got him on tape saying. You know, we'll have to see how that works out for LSU. But LSU being an 8 seed, one of the more interesting 8 seeds in the tournament. Some other SEC teams that might be interesting. You know, Tennessee is, of course, well coached with Coach Rick Barnes up there. And, you know, they're a 5 seed, but they were a team that they went 10-1 to start, 4-1 in SEC play. And then they went 8-7 in their last 15 games. So they were kind of the opposite of what Arkansas is. Arkansas started off cold, finished hot. Tennessee, on the other hand, started off hot and finished basically mediocre. But can they get John Fulkerson, who was injured, back? That's going to be a big thing. And could hinder their run? I mean, that could help their run a little bit. But from the SEC, I like the idea of my potential teams that could go to the Final Four, Arkansas and Alabama, if Alabama can hit the 3s. And I kind of like LSU. Maybe they could slip up and beat somebody there. For the ACC, I'm rolling with Florida State. I'm going to have Florida State in the Final Four. Interesting. One of the interesting stats, the tallest team as far as across all positions is Florida State. I'm going to go with the tall guys. You can't coach somebody to be tall. Leonard Hamilton's got a bunch of tall guys that run the floor. Generally, if you can do that, you can play pretty good basketball. So give me Florida State. I think they're going to ride Scotty Barnes and Raquan Gray and MJ Walker, who is shooting 44% from the three-point line. Think about that. He's shooting 44% from three-point land. That's pretty good. Question is, can they get him open? So look for Florida State, and I think they could be a team that can go to the Final Four. And I like Georgia Tech a lot. They're a team that's been up and down, but Jose Alvarado is a guy that is really great. And then Moses Wright averages 18 and 8. When you got 2 guys that are in double figures, and one of them being a do-it-all type player in Jose Alvarado, who shoots 41% from three-point land, that generally can work out pretty well for you. All right, if you want to talk about anything we've went over here, if you want to talk about your potential sleeper there, people have been in my instant messages talking to me about their favorites. Winthrop. Lots of folks like Winthrop. Nothing against the Eagles. I don't think they're going to make the Final Four, but they put together a heck of a season. We can talk about that when we come back. You're listening to The Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Cat food breath. That's funny. Is everybody kind of cheering for Winthrop as far as my folks from South Carolina that are watching? I mean, I think everybody wants to see the little guy do well, right? That would make a lot of sense. My Gamecock friends are all telling me this week they're Rutgers fans and they're Winthrop fans. They want Rutgers to win and Winthrop to win. The hatred runs deep there, I guess. What a mess, man. When you look at some of the headlines that are out there, I laugh at some of these things. People are talking about the Patriots and how they're paying for receivers because they can't develop any. That's kind of funny in its own right, right? I love the this story that we're going to talk about in a second. Well, welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Thanks to Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network joining us earlier. Of course, you can join the program, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. I looked at my ACC and SEC teams I think can make the Final Four. Arkansas and Alabama, I kind of agree with Skip Bayless there. That's two teams that could do it. My sleeper team out of the SEC is LSU. If they could learn how to play defense, they would be outstanding. But I doubt they're going to be able to pick that up here in the next couple of days. My ACC teams, I like Florida State, and I really like Georgia Tech, just because they've got that big 1-2 punch there. Two guys that shoot over 40% from three-point land. So they were good enough to win the ACC tournament and, of course, knock off Florida State, who is a really good basketball team. You know, I think they have a chance they can do some stuff. So we'll see how that works out. Now watch them go out and they'll lose that first game to, Loyola Chicago. Sister Jean is going to be there, the 101-year-old nun who loves some basketball. Reports are she will be able to go to these games. Little Sister Jean magic there. Jimmy says we should look out for Creighton. Okay. Here's an interesting story today. I told you yesterday about Minnesota firing New Mexico's, Richard Pitino. He was out of a job for about 12 hours. And then, boom, he's picked up by New Mexico. I did some research on this. He has no ties to New Mexico. He has no idea about the recruiting and everything else that goes on out there. Okay, I think he got hired because his name's Pitino. Just saying. He didn't really light the world on fire at Minnesota, which is why he was probably fired. Side note, Gamecock fans on Twitter, I've seen a lot of folks talking about when are they going to call Rick Pitino? When is it going to be, hey, we're going to call Rick Pitino? I mean, look what he did with Iona. And you sit and you think about that for a minute. Rick Pitino has had issues at two major jobs and left them with problems. Remember the stuff with Louisville, with paying, the program was thought to be paying strippers and everything else. Then you've got the fact that he left Kentucky and left them with problems. I'm just saying. The guy had to leave the country for a year to coach over in Greece. Is that really what you want as a South Carolina fan? A guy that's like, all right, they took Iona. We're going to forgive all sins here, and we're going to let Rick Pitino have a chance. I don't know if that's kind of the way you want to go. Only from that front, you can literally say, okay, Rick Pitino is a guy that has done a lot of great things, and I can buy that. But he's also 68 years old. Do you want to put your program in the hands of a 68-year-old guy? Trevor says, Shamcock fans, you're not getting Pitino. Okay. Jimmy says Rick Pitino equals strippers and cocaine. You're probably right about that. But the guy's 68 years old. Now, there may be a section of folks that they look at Rick Pitino and they say, you know what? We can overlook all of that and we can bring him in. But there's also, I think, the more blue blood type programs are going to look at Pitino and see, no, I don't see that happening at all. I don't see that happening at all. He's coached all over the place, by the way. Of course, Iona, we talked about them. Then, of course, Kentucky, he was with the Celtics, the Knicks, Providence, all over the place. Trevor says Pitino to Indiana. You know, Indiana, that might make sense. Bobby Knight's not there anymore, and I know that. But I still think there's a section of people that think that Indiana is a blue blood type basketball program. And they really haven't been that way since Bobby Knight left. But I think that that would make some sense. I don't think that he came back to college basketball just to be the head coach at Iona. Let's just be honest. I think that's a stepping stone job, and he's going to go somewhere else. And by the way, as the 5th seed in the MAC, he took them to the tournament title. They're going to be playing this week in the NCAA tournament. So he still knows what he's doing. I just wonder if the baggage is too much. If you're a Gamecock fan and you want Rick Pitino, call up and tell me why. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832. Are you willing to overlook all of that? And actually be good for, 3 or 4 seasons maybe? Because you can't beat Father Time. He's 68 years old. You think that that's the move that South Carolina should make if they get rid of Frank Martin, which I don't know what the story is with that, but there was the report, of course, from Phil Kornbluth that said, hey, that's probably what's going to happen. I think it's better to stay with Frank Martin than to go and get Rick Pitino. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832. That is the number to call to join us here on The Rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I think it's funny that the fact that Richard Pitino gets a job like 12 hours afterwards. Out to the phones we go. And welcome into The Rundown. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
What's up, buddy?
Nothing much. They were just, they said call, ask why we thought Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
Was a good fit. Cola.
Sure. What do you got?
Honestly, I think he's a great coach.
Okay. Well, there you go. Interesting stuff there. He is a great coach. I can buy that. I just don't know if you want the baggage that's hung over him pretty much at every program he's been at. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you want to join us here on The Rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. And feel free to give us a call here, and we'll talk about is that the guy that you want? I think Pat Kelsey from Winthrop would be a much better pick. But Patino's kind of like a stamp hire. Like, this guy's won a national title. That's kind of the way it looks. Now, Rick Pitino could come here and do all kinds of great things. Coach 5 to 6 years and then retire and head off into the sunset. And South Carolina could turn into a perennial power in the SEC. I'm not saying that couldn't happen. Just wonder if he's cleaned up enough. And, up at Iona, I mean, it's kind of, I'm sure they're watching him intently up there. They don't want that on their program. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you want to join us here on the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400, I found an interesting story about Tennessee football with Jeremy Pruitt that we'll share with you in a moment. This guy is, he's a treasure. He's an absolute treasure with some of the stuff that's happened with him. So we'll talk about that when we come back. We're also taking calls on the Rick Pitino thing that's come up and your sleeper picks for the NCAA tournament, your Final Four picks for the NCAA tournament, because I've only got one. I like Florida State a lot. After that, I can find holes in just about everybody. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you'd like to join us here on the Rundown this afternoon, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Take a quick break. We'll be right back. Yeah, I don't think Rick Pitino is going to be at Iona next season. That's not going to happen. Somebody's going to hire him. You're right. You know what? I missed this this where they're saying that Tennessee had some players suspended. Oh goodness. What a disaster. The other story is great though with and I feel so bad because I put Jeremy Pruitt over. I thought he was going to be great. I think that, man, Tennessee's terrible. I don't know. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Normally, when we talk about Tennessee, it's from players leaving the program. I've got 2 Tennessee football stories tonight, and we goof on Georgia because it seems like Georgia always ends up with an arrest. But this was something that was interesting. Tennessee had like 4 players that were suspended from the team because of the I'm going to read you this piece here. Martavius French, Isaac Washington, Aaron Willis were suspended indefinitely Friday after they are arrested this week on preliminary charges related to misdemeanor drug possession. A 4th player who was also suspended indefinitely, a source with direct knowledge of the situation told Knox News. 5 individuals arrested in connection with an incident that occurred Tuesday evening at the Stokely Hall dorm on the Knoxville campus. Oh, man. Also arrested were unnamed juveniles. So I guess they were partying with kids. Yeah, I mean, they had, or it may have been recruiting. Who knows? Maybe been some kids that were there with recruiting, running around with their McDonald's Happy Meal that has some money in it. Who knows? We'll have to see how that works out. So that was from last week. I got to stop making fun of Georgia with the arrest now because there's so much stuff that comes out with Tennessee that we can just all kind of laugh at. And then my final thing is Jeremy Pruitt. It comes out that he sold his mansion in Knoxville, which, by the way, who wants that? Anyway, he sells his mansion in Knoxville and takes what is reported to be a huge loss. And people are mocking him like crazy on Twitter and everything else. One quote, Jeremy Pruitt, the man who never stopped losing. How do you lose money on your house? If you're a reporter and you're working up there in Knoxville, covering Tennessee has to be tough. I mean, it's McDonald's bags one day, Pruitt being mocked the next day, guys partying with juveniles the next day after that. Tennessee is the epitome of a gong show. I mean, they really are. And, you know, there are some national guys, and I love Josh Pate from 247 Sports, who does the Late Kick podcast. He's put out there, he doesn't think that things are going to be as bad as people think. Yeah, he's put that out there. And, you know, he may be right about that. But if you're a South Carolina fan, I mean, it's almost to the point now where you need to circle that Tennessee game as a win next season. I think. Who in the world have they got coming back? Insane with all that. Jimmy with the proper notes there. Sold his house for a loss of $459,000. Yeah. I just, the more and more you read about Tennessee, I think that is quite possibly, it's becoming the worst job in the SEC. Now, I know some people look at Vanderbilt and all that. Okay, yeah, I'm talking about just right now with the sanctions that are probably coming and the way that you've got players who know that things are happening there and they can't keep their nose clean and they're partying with drugs and minors on the campus. 5 of them arrested, in addition to several minors. I just laugh. And the apologists out there for Tennessee are hilarious to me. Oh, well, things aren't that bad. Really? Really? Tennessee needs to worry about Vanderbilt this year. Can they win an SEC game this year? Seriously. JW says Tennessee is officially the king of the clown college. Yeah. I'm definitely buying that. I think Coach Barnes up there, who we know is a good coach, he's probably like, don't even go anywhere near the football building. That's kind of the way that it is there. Brock with the quote of the day online. Does the mansion have golden arches? I think it does, and it probably has one of those McDonald's playgrounds in it too. They've taken all those out with the pandemic. He probably had one of those put in. That wouldn't surprise me. You know, one of the big playgrounds that has like the tube slides and then the the ball pit that you can jump in. Jeremy Pruitt probably had that. That wouldn't shock me at all. Bring recruits over to his house. Come play in the playground. Pick up your McDonald's bag full of cash on the way out. Make sure you don't do drugs with my guys that are on campus, though. I don't want to have to deal with that. Maybe Pruitt said that. Apparently, Josh Heupel has missed that memo because it's already happening again. It literally seems like every chance we get, we have something from Tennessee that it's at the point where you're just kind of laughing at it. Anyway, we'll take calls on that at 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. If it's not sanctions because of bags full of paper, we're having drugs with minors on campus. I mean, that's pretty much all you got, Tennessee. We'll take your calls at 803-978-1832. Tomorrow, Terrence Oglesby joins us, former Clemson Tiger, and he does some radio for the Tigers. We'll talk about the Clemson matchup with Rutgers. We'll also possibly look a little bit later on this week at the matchup for the South Carolina women's team. They take on Mercer on Sunday night. And can Winthrop slay the dragon? Can they beat Villanova and be that 12 seed that wins over the 5 seed? Maybe. Brock says Pruitt's play place is better than Dabo's basketball court. Very good, sir. Very good. Trevor says Tennessee football is on the same path as IU basketball. I don't think that they're IU has been, I got to follow IU a little bit more, but I don't think they've had the issues that Tennessee's had, where the athletic director has come out and said, we've had major discrepancies. Oof. Oh my goodness. Later on in the week, I will tell you who I have as my final 4 picks, so you can use them if you want. Generally, I have my picks by now, but I don't. So I'm going to do some studying tonight. We'll see where I can go with that. Get my final 4 matchups together. I just hope that for my bracket, I think I'm like everybody else. I judge my bracket by how many Sweet 16 teams that I have. One year, I had 15 of the 16. It's 14 of the 16. I'm sorry. So I had 14 of the Sweet 16, which is really good. And I finished I think 8th in my pool. That's all of my Sweet 16 matchups ended up losing. I think of the 14 Sweet 16 teams that I had, I think 6 of them won or something like that. It was terrible. So maybe I'm not the best judge here, but we'll put it out there anyway. I'm looking forward to talking to Terrence Oglesby tomorrow. He puts out some interesting stuff on Twitter, so we'll chat with him as well. And we're going to follow along and see there has to be something said here in the next couple of days. I think that if they had the meeting with Frank Martin last night or yesterday, I don't think they wanted to announce anything simply because they didn't want to overshadow the women's team. That's just a theory I have. Maybe give it another day before they announce what's going on. We'll see how that goes. Players are all behind Frank Martin, though. I don't know. Someone did put out, though, we can all like Frank Martin, but the results haven't been exactly what way to look at it. I'm on the train of, I think Frank Martin should be given another chance. Give him the COVID year, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk is next. He is the czar of Clemson Sports.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
He will be able to take you home from 4 to 6. My name is Rob Sanders. You can find me on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Podcast will be up at 5 o'clock. And once again, we'll be back at it tomorrow with Terrence Oglesby here on The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I agree with everything Trevor said for the most part. Comes with its own play place. That's funny. All right, you guys. Hey, make sure you enter my pool. You guys want to get in the bracket pool? I'll put it on the link there. You can send me a message on Twitter. Matt Rob Sounds Good. I'll invite you. Pot's already up to I think $400. So $20 to get in. You might win the whole thing. There you go. Send me a message. We'll get you in. Okay. You guys have a great day. I appreciate y'all as always. Mm-mm-mm.